open wheel tour of the world continues and the FIA Formula 4 Esports Regional Tour lands down under. Welcome to Oran Park as the Asia Pacific region gets ready to rumble for what should be an enthralling 20 minutes of racing here live on RaceSpotTV. Hello everyone, delighted to have your company once again. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, joined alongside by Reese Gardiner as we head to a track that no longer exists in the real world but is preserved here on the sim. This race is one of my favorite tracks that I no longer get to watch in real world motorsport, and we're at a slightly awkward configuration of it, some would say, as we go to the south layout for week 4 of racing in the FIA Formula 4 Esports Regional Tour.
Yep, this is the Asia Pacific region. Hello everyone, and of course, yes, week 4, Oran Park South, which is actually the closest layout to the original configuration of Oran Park Raceway as it opened in the 1960s. It was even a little bit twistier than now then. I'm looking forward to this, Arjuna, because it's always nice to go to Oran Park. This is one of the lost classics of Australian motorsport. A beautiful track to drive. Very tight, though, which should test the driver's talent.
It's going to also make passing very difficult and mean you're going to need to take your opportunities when they come. Looking at the schedule, though, you will note that Oran Park on deck twice. We return here in week 7 after the halfway mark of the campaign for the full layout, and similarly, Suzuka, we head to the East layout in a couple of weeks' time, and we had the Grand Prix layout back in week 2. I do enjoy, though, Reese, looking at the schedule. Each of these regions for this regional tour focuses on the tracks specific to each region. We do have a nice healthy mix of Asian, Australian tracks joining iRacing's ranks, and of course, a couple new ones coming on the horizon.
Yeah, that we do. Beautiful sequence of tracks that we are visiting for the Asia Pacific region. I really love seeing a good selection of Asian and Australian tracks there as we check out the track as it is and the grid, Arjuna. Looks like we've got a nice field of 22 cars for this one.
They have blown through qualifying, and so we need to get to the grid. Leo Norman with a 39.857. Yes, it's a very quick lap, will lead us to the green, along with Mark Camps, James Shire, Lee Woyle, and then Cameron Hamilton and Yves Perro rounding out your top 3 rows. From 7th, Shane Douglas, along with the Scandinavian Simon Reigen, and then Raoul Oliver and Brett King make up the rest of the top 10. Alexander Wilkinson and then Yuri Schell, 11th and 12th positions, with hopefully not unlucky 13th for Jeremy Mason, alongside Thiago Santos. 15th for Julian Veal, 16th for George Owuzu, with Tosei Moriyama and then Alessandro Ambrosino making up the first cars with no times on the board. Still rolling through a handful more cars. Havert Ellingson, Dale Atkins, Rafael Ribeiro, Joe Barth and Alberto Blasquez will make up the rest of the 23-car field. The great thing about this FIA regional tour, Reese, is it's open to anyone, and we're not watching the best of the best in sim racing today. We're watching everybody who is going to go racing. Anyone with a non-rookie license is eligible to compete.
That they are, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what the standing start is going to be like here. It's a bit of a short run to turn 1 here at the south layout of Oran Park. So let's see what happens as the revs rise and we get ready to go. Ready
to rumble at Oran Park. Week 4 of the FIA Formula 4 Esports Regional Tour is underway. Couple of cars getting good starts. Cameron Hamilton's already up into 3rd as we'll get ready to flick it into the left. Take that shortcut and onto the brakes for the first time of asking. Already contact. Hamilton goes around Concertina behind and say goodbye to Leo Neumann at the front.
Yeah, indeed. That's a big breakaway from our leader. It looks like it was James Shear that Cameron Hamilton made contact with, and Hamilton is already out. Car 7 out of the running here as the cars come through the dogleg for the first time. We're already at the end of the first lap here. The pole position time from Leo Naumann was a 39.85, and we got another crash happening around the lap here. Oh, goodness me. All right.
Oh.
This is already a lot of fun.
And it's not stopped yet. We say goodbye to the race leader that has broken away by 4 full seconds. Drag race down into turn number 1 between Ambrosino and Atkins. Ambrosino's gone 12 positions up on the opening lap. It goes to show the level of carnage that we had. 39 seconds the qualifying time. This is going to be a furious race, that's for sure.
Well, at the moment, Naumann leading by 3.2 7 seconds. There's a look at the battle for second here. Tosei Moriyama holding off Simon Ridgen, and Moriyama has had the most mammoth of all runs here. He started in 17th. He's up to second.
I mean, these numbers are wild. When you look at them on the left side of your screen, there are cars that are also now exiting the pit lane after being involved in the opening lap shenanigans. It is only 3.5 seconds that currently separate first and second. We'll have to keep an eye to see just how close that gap's going to come as more drama into turn one. Brett King makes a mistake and drops from 4th position.
Yeah, unfortunate there for King in the number 19. It looks like he lost it all on his own there, just spun on the inside of the corner. He's finally managed to get it going again, just ahead of Mason and Ellingson. Oh dear, looks like Ambrosino with an issue as well, and he's already out of the server. So considering the carnage that we've seen so far, Arjuna, and it's still continuing, I think we're going to see a few rage quits here.
Just a few, and we'll have to probably get a running total on how many cars finish on the lead lap. Here's what happened with Hamilton, and, well, separate incidents it would seem in towards the opening corner, and from here, I think we'll need a couple of different looks at everything that went on.
Yeah, looks like just some contact there that put Shear around as well. Shear started in 3rd there, but didn't quite hook up the standing start and paid for it. Furthermore, back in the field here, coming up to the second half of the lap, looks to me like just a case of incidents happening ahead, drivers having nowhere to go.
So that was Thiago Santos, who we saw getting rear-ended by Alexander Wilkinson. Everyone else able to get through that relatively unscathed. 12 cars are still left on the lead lap with 4 laps complete. We had 22 take to the start. That's how wild this has been, and they've all now broken up as well. The gaps have very much splintered apart. The only real battle pack that we've got, you see lapped cars going at it in towards turn number 1, but battle for 9th on back.
Oh, goodness me, that's quite the dive there from Alberto Blázquez on Jeremy Mason. That was full position in the top 10, and it looks like another car off the circuit. Brett King, actually, we saw him off before, so now manages to get going again. I think it's just going to be a case of who survives, really, because these cars, though they are slow, they are difficult to drive, and Oran Park is a very bumpy circuit with not much space if you make an error.
Let's jump on board with Dale Atkins, and there's big smoke in front. I think that was potentially Simon Ridgen, who had already been tangled up in drama on the previous lap, who now drops even further.
Yeah, making contact with Lee Woyle there. Woyle spun in front of him, and there was nowhere for Ridgen to go, and went for a big old tumble. That's how you see it on the replay. Yeah, that's very awkward.
You were trying to describe a lap of Oran Park, so let's jump on board again with Dale Atkins and run into the shortcut of turn number 1. On the brakes, a left-hand hairpin, and then it starts to get nice and twisty, Reese.
It does indeed. Beautiful flowing sequence of turns this. You go through a dip running over the hills and try to use the curbs as much as you can. And in for this left-hander, 4th gear in these FIA F4 cars. The dog leg is flat out, chicane across the top of the hill. You come down into the final turn, which has a huge elevation change on the way in. That could be a very good passing opportunity if you get your run right.
And again, that was 40-odd seconds, and now another lap. 20-minute race. We're estimated to be doing 30 laps over the course of that run, and it is going to be up towards the front where a couple of drivers will be keeping an eye on where they are relative to the traffic, because it's now within 1.5 seconds. Moriyama's come from 17th to 2nd and still wants the chance to go for the race lead.
He still does. 40.0 on the last lap. Looks like Leo Naumann with dealing with traffic, actually running a little bit slower. Looks like the gap has come back into Naumann's favor here. We keep our eye on this race lead battle. See Moriyama still working his way through traffic, and he is struggling with that rear end.
These drivers do have...
he spun.
Oh, and there goes the battle for second then. Moriyama through the undulation. Almost gets taken out with the rejoin.
Yeah, you got to be careful about that. Always earn yourself a protest if you get that re-entry quite squared off. So back of the car into the wall, and thank goodness the driver ahead was able to take avoiding action, but it's so easy to lose the rear end of these cars through that elevation change.
And you could see was wiggling the rear around before he even got there. Now what's happened to the race leader?
Oh!
Who's up on the roll hoop, and Nauman's back down on pit lane as Moriyama's had more drama. Raul Oliver now leads at Oran Park.
Wow, okay. I mean, this is going to be awkward, this incident for our race leader, because it was contact with a lap car, but it was the lap car that made the contact. Just way too aggressive into the first turn for James Shear.
Uh-oh. I'm not liking the sounds of this. And coming in like a wrecking ball, James Shear sends Leo. Whoa! Whoa!
Yeah. That's huge there. That's probably the most spectacular way I've seen someone taken out of the lead of a race in a very long time.
One more look at it, and then what happens to Moriyama? All by himself, just too much brake bias maybe towards the rear, and then back end steps around, and there goes the race leader.
Yeah, so now the lead is in Raul Tomas Oliver's hands, and he's got to be careful here for Moriyama, who actually goes back to the race lead. He does indeed. Oh, he managed to catch that up pretty quickly.
I tell you what, Moriyama's going to have the wildest story to tell of this race. Had already looped it into the barriers before the mistake at turn number 1, and not even halfway through this race, leads once more. Dale Atkins is only 2.5 seconds off of your lead as well. 16 positions gained as Moriyama's lost it again.
Oh no, this is a chaotic race. It seems like no one wants to win it. Oliver back into the lead, and Dale Atkins moves up to second.
This feels like the only time we get races as crazy as this traditionally, Reese, would be short course racing or potentially rallycross racing. 22 started, 5 are currently scored on the leading lap.
It's ridiculous numbers, and we're not even halfway through this race. It goes for 20 minutes, the race is in this series, and oh dear, Moriyama's still having issues with the car here. He goes across on the inside of the final turn. Does he go for the pits? I mean, that car looks pretty heavily damaged. The front wing is bent, but he's decided to continue on.
Were these intentional statements being made with the lines being run? I think they are.
Oh, hey, hang on.
Moriyama's trying something, unfortunately less successfully than Max Verstappen. The only person Moriyama takes out is himself.
Yeah, front end of the car destroyed, and he's immediately gone back to the pits from that. So let's hope that the race calms down just a little bit from here. We've gotten all of the nerves out, and now it's all about the battle between Raul Oliver and Dale Atkins. They're only separated by 4 seconds. That's the closest battle on track right now from what I can see.
Moriyama is officially out of this race, I can confirm. Will mean that everyone else is promoted in that absence. Up the inside, Mark Camps tries to get past Jeremy Mason. This all now for 5th position, given all the drivers that have been dropping out. They are 1 lap down, we should just point out. 10 minutes into the race, Camps has already had to make a trip down to pit lane and get damage repairs. Again, I don't think I've ever commentated on a race quite like this, and it's going to continue because now we have another car that's making a trip down to the pit lane.
And we do Yuri Scheel from 4th place. Yuri Schelt, my apologies, and it looks like the front wing is very heavily damaged on that thing. It looks to me like he made contact with Julian Vell, car 3 on the exit of the final turn. Vell spun and ended up getting collected.
22 starters, officially now down to 3 left on the lead lap, and that is going to be 2 sooner rather than later. Dale Atkins is only 3 seconds off the back of Raul Oliver, who we watch now out of that final corner with half the race officially complete, and maybe the most exciting 15 laps that any of these drivers have ever taken part in. It's all just going to be about staying on the track now for the remainder of the race. Haven't looked at weather conditions, but early in the morning, Reese, these are pretty good conditions to go racing.
Yeah, they are just past 8:30 a.m. in sim time and a 24-degree track. Now, I believe these cars don't have tyre warmers, so I think a big explanation for how chaotic things were at the start is that the tyres were extremely cold on that track surface. But now they are up to temperature, and the drivers should be able to get a bit more stability out of those cars. Meanwhile, it looks like Oliver here, who has found himself in the race lead, he's getting faster cars coming up behind him, but they are cars that are a lap or more down. So he's just letting them run their own race here. Dale Atkins continuing to decrease the gap. It's only at 2.3 seconds now.
Oliver almost lost a bunch of time as those faster cars passed him. Almost got ran wide. Atkins almost binned it through the opening corner as well. They're definitely pushing. The other thing I did note with the weather conditions was the amount of wind that we have, which with these open wheel machines maybe is a bit of a factor, especially given that the undulation will sometimes expose the cars to wind. In slightly fast fashion, Dale Atkins had got within a second of the lead and then loops it through the final corner.
And isn't quite successful at getting it spun around either. So, is he stuck in the wall? No,
he very well could be.
For that.
One more look at it from the onboard, and you'll see just pushed wide, slightly rear end, immediately stepped around, and then unfortunately trying to get the car pointed back in a straight line. It's not hooked against the wall, but it's not ideal, that's for sure.
No, certainly not. Like there's a little bit of damage to the front suspension from that as well. So walking wounded at the moment is Dale Atkins. That means that Raul Oliveira's lead has ballooned to 16 seconds, and Dale Atkins is the only other car on the lead lap here.
And that might change given there's the damage now to the front right suspension of that Formula 4 machine. So yeah, we will have to track the lap times for Atkins and just see if he maybe will also come down to the pit lane. And speaking of, right on cue.
Yeah, getting that damage repaired. The pit entry here at Oran Park is very difficult. It's right on the racing line, and you've got to brake hard while you're still on the racetrack to get into the pit lane. Let's see how long that damage takes to get repaired for Atkins. If there is there's a fast repair in hand. He's immediately gotten back going again. Meanwhile, three-way battle for fourth. Good.
Three-way battle for fourth, and also I think Dale Atkins is now officially one lap down, so our race leader is the only car scored on the leading lap. Onto the main straight that will go. Nauman, former race leader, looks to the inside, but Ellingson's going to get there first, all as they're catching the back of some lap traffic. And up the inside into turn number one. There's some more contact.
Yeah, looks like Brett King wasn't quite respecting the etiquette there. Turned in on the cars trying to battle with each other and lap him. So unfortunate there, but Ellingson does get past him in the end once he recovers. Meanwhile, 8th is on. Simon Ridgen is fighting with car 18 of Yuri Schell, and goodness me, Schell almost understeered right into Ridgen there, but outside line, better traction, moves back on through.
I mean, the warning is given, to be fair, on Yuri Schell's car, that student driver. Not necessarily sure this is the best place to be learning, if we're being completely fair. Jeremy Mason's going to get passed by Regen and then potentially by Schell as well, but you can just see the delta between some of these drivers. They've all been involved in so much today. These drivers, by the way, have come from Mount Panorama a week ago. I don't think many, Reese, would have thought that Oran Park would have been even more dramatic than a trip to the mountain.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the mountain does bite, and you have to be careful around it, but here you've got a super tight track, super short as well, and a full field of cars to negotiate as well. Some of them probably not quite up to scratch when it comes to recovering from incidents. On board with our race leader, we see another hazard, which immediately gets out of the way, and it looks like Oliver, all he has to do for the time being is keep it clean, keep it smooth. He's got this win in the bag. I hope I haven't just cursed him.
Oh, I was going to say, yesterday on RaceSpotTV, we had maybe the worst commentator's curse that I've ever seen, where Joey Tebben managed to curse not one, but two drivers in the space of one corner. And so that will never be forgotten, but hopefully no such commentator's curse from Reese. Dale Atkins, by the way, after coming down on pit lane, back into the fight for second. Alberto Blasquez, another driver that's worked their way on forward through all of the madness. 20 positions gained and 17 positions gained. Those aren't normal numbers by any means.
No, not especially not of a race of this length around a track of this length. Looks like Atkins is starting to come back at him here. Is there going to be a dive into the dog leg? He certainly has a look, but he's not quite far up enough to get it done. Blasquez, though, runs a bit wide probably anticipating a huge dive bomb considering the racing that we've seen so far. And Atkins still with the inside line coming into turn 1. He turns in early, side by side when they get to the corner, and Blasquez just says, all right, mate, you can have that one.
Nicely done, to be fair, between the both of them. Not trying to cost each other too much more additional time either. Especially important given how many cars are now sitting in the pit lane. Simon Rygens joined the likes of Brett King, Shane Douglas, Julian Veal, Tosei Moriyama, Cameron Hamilton, etc., etc., etc. We're into the final 3 minutes of this race. There are just 8 cars still circulating around the track.
Yeah, and have you noticed that things have gotten quite a bit calmer as a result too?
Yes, there's certainly less cars off in the grass advertising lawnmower services for Oran Park.
Certainly. Probably the only lawn mowing services needed in the real world today are front verge services, because this track is a suburb now. There's just houses all around as Atkins spins from second. There we go. That has let Blasquez back through, and it's not the first time Atkins has had a big spin. Unfortunately, it's just cost him second place.
It might be the last spin, though, as we head on to the final 5 or so laps of the race. Has dropped behind Mark Camps as well, a little bit deep through the final corner. Almost thought he was about to run into the wall through that complex for a second time today. Mark Camps, after being one of the first cars to head onto the pit lane, by the way, pitted 2 laps into the race, might still have a chance to get back up to second where he started this one. Blasquez feeling the pressure now in through that middle sector. Yes, there's fewer cars on track. Doesn't mean there's less danger to be focused on.
And I think to highlight Camps at the moment, he was the driver that started in second place. So for him to be able to climb his way back up, stick with this despite everything that's gone on in this race, really speaks to his commitment as Atkins is having further adventures out there. Back to 4th, and looks like Jeremy Mason will get a lap back on him for the time being. 1 minute and 40 seconds to go, and we'll see what Camps can do to catch up to Blasquez here. He's right on the back of him now as they negotiate more lap traffic.
And it should be, what, 3 laps to go or so for them this time by. All depend on where the race leader is going to fare compared to these drivers, given that they are fighting and he is not. Rising through the middle sector, just a couple corners to go before they head to the line once more. Blasquez was almost off into the grass and now loops it through the final corner. Mark Camps has gone from the back right back up to second.
All right, Blasquez manages to recover and gets back going. He's ultimately only lost 1 position from that to Leo Naumann, who is our pole sitter. As we check out, once again, it's a case of getting into the corner too hot in the rear end, just going on the driver. Shame to see, but fortunately he escaped any significant damage from that. Yeah, Naumann's back into 3rd.
Yes, and only 1 lap down is, I think, what is also remarkable. Last time by did 39.751. Was 2 seconds quicker than our race leader, but this was not necessarily a race of speed. It was a race of staying out of trouble, and with a white flag officially in hand, 1 more lap for Raul Oliver to lead at Oran Park to see the checkered flag and grab the victory.
Yes, all he has to do is keep it together here. You can see that he's not pushing at all. He knows the advantage he has. He knows that all he needs to do is stay out of trouble, and he can collect that checkered flag at the end of the race here. Just nice and smooth through the dogleg. One more time. 29 wild laps that Raul Oliver has survived and endured. No one else stands on the mark with him, the only driver on the leading lap and victorious in the FIA Formula 4 Esports Regional Tour here at Oran Park. 1 lap down, Mark Camps goes from the front to the back and back to the front. Leo Naumann, after spinning from the lead of the race, will come across the line to grab the final step on the podium. But my goodness, Reese, I think that might be the wildest race that either of us has ever commentated on. Yeah, it only lasted for 20 minutes, but I feel like I've been here for 6 hours at this point.
I feel like I've aged about 6 years in that time as well.
Yeah.
We'll get a look at the results. We'll very quickly run our way on through them, and then we will hopefully be able to talk to a few of the drivers as well. There are the results on the left side of the screen. The one thing that you note, how many drivers have outs next to their name rather than +2, +3, or anything else? So much chaos was had. Here's a look at how they're actually scored. No one left on the leading lap except for Oliver, who was +8 from where they qualified. Mark Camps with the early pit stop back up to second, while Leo Naumann recovers to the final spot on the podium. 19 places gained for Alberto Blasquez, 15 gained for Dale Atkins, 7 gained for Jeremy Mason. Recipients of misfortune for the likes of James Shear, Yuri Schell, Harvard Ellison, and then Simon Regen. And as we get into the rest of the used car lot, just look at those laps start to rack on up. Brett King, Shane Douglas, Julian Veal, Tosei Moriyama, Cameron Hamilton, Yves Perrault, Alexander Wilkinson, Giorgio Wusu, Rafael Ribeiro, Lee Royal, and then final couple of cars, Alessandro Ambrosino, Thiago Santos, and Joe Barth. The 23 cars that attempted a race at Oran Park, attempted, being the operative word, Reese.
Yeah, certainly there was an attempt at a race there, but tell you what, it was all about survival, and Oliver was the one to come away with it at the end. It looks like Joe Barth there scored last, actually didn't take to the start. Maybe that was for the best.
Maybe for the best indeed. We had such an abbreviated pre-show that we didn't even really get the chance to talk more about this FIA Formula 4 Esports Regional Tour, broken up into 4 different regions. But Reese, the reason why I love this series so much is it's not about isolating drivers from down under just to compete against yourself. We don't want to pigeonhole you to just competing with other Australians. No, we want to give you fixed time slots with which to race in. 8 time slots per week for each region. That tots up to 32 across of all of the 4 regions. There is so much Formula 4 racing that you can do. You can always find someone to be going wheel to wheel against.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the initiative that the FIA has come in with iRacing and brought the FIA F4 to the sim. It certainly resulted in some really good opportunities for sim racers looking to make their way up in the world.
And it's open to anyone with a rookie license, a non-rookie license or above. So all you've got to do is do a couple of races, head on to iRacing.com, start your journey, and then you'll be able to join this FIA Formula 4 Esports Regional Tour. Each of the regions, of course, also focuses on tracks specific to the region. And so if you're from Asia Pacific, well, Reese, we're going to one of the free tracks on iRacing, a track that so many will know, maybe not everyone will love. Next week in APAC, it's trip to Okayama.
Yeah, Okayama's a fantastic circuit in my opinion. Really good in the slower cars, so it should suit F4 nicely. East layout of Suzuka, we go to the Grand Prix layout of Oran Park, then Motegi, Phillip Island, Sandown. Tsukuba is going to be an interesting one, another super short track. And then rounding it off at Winton, which has been a bit of a polarizing venue in the past. Love this schedule, certainly hoping that the drivers can tackle it with the same aplomb that we saw today.
And maybe with a little bit more success in terms of keeping drivers on the road. That's what we always like to see. For now, though, it is time to say goodbye once more. Next week, where are we going? Well, it's over to the streets of Long Beach. We will return to the Americas region and challenge these drivers in this low-power open-wheel machine to survive the bumps and to be able to stay within the confines of the track when undoubtedly they'll find ways to go 3 and 4 wide once more. For now, it's time to say goodbye. For Reese Gardiner alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you in 7 days' time, but for now, we'll see you next time on the road to the FIA Formula 4 Esports Regional Tour.